As we heard, Florida, we know it's one of the key battleground states. President Donald Trump is giving it all he's got.
Florida is a crucial state. It's been a swing state for a very, very long time here in the U.S., but it actually is more of a must-win for President Trump. If Donald Trump does not win Florida, we're going to have a very early night here on election night on November 3rd. If he can pull off Florida, then the race moves to some other states. But I think that's sort of his first hurdle on election night, is to show that he can win Florida. It's possible, likely even, that it's going to be very close there, and in which case focus is going to turn to states like Arizona in the west, North Carolina on the coast, and then those same three Rust Belt states in the Midwest that decided the last election, which are Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania.
He hadn't been tracking well in Florida at all, had he, Donald Trump?
He's not tracking well in any polling, and that's one of the interesting sort of subtexts of this election, is that there is so much second guessing of the public polling because, everyone 4 years ago thought, including, I think, President Trump himself, thought there was very little chance he would win. Hillary Clinton did not have the kind of a lead in the public polling that Joe Biden has, but she did have a lead in mid-October, just a little bit, prior to where we are now in the cycle, because of that Access Hollywood tape, which came out in early October 4 years ago. And then over that last 2 weeks, things tightened up. We have yet to see here in this year's election, in the public polling, we have yet to see that kind of tightening in the polls. There's been a little bit of drawing back towards 9 points in the national polling. And Florida, I think, is winnable for him. But again, that's just a first hurdle for him.
Look, when he came to power in 2016, he hadn't been in power before. He has been in power for 4 years, and he's an energetic campaigner, defies his age, really, and he gets out there and he zips from here to here. But is the cut-through not there with this rock concert-style campaigning because of where people are and what they've seen?
Well, I think there's a lot of anxiety among people who are not diehard Trump supporters about going to a public rally where they're not clear that there's going to be basic public health guidance being followed, namely mask wearing and physical distancing. So I think that's one reason why the rallies may not be as much of a asset to President Trump this time around, is because he's just not going to get those voters he needs to win over to come out to them, because the only people really listening to his disregard for the science on these public health measures are people who are really all in with Donald Trump. And so, in the last debate a couple of nights ago, he said we're rounding the corner on COVID-19. The problem with that is that we're seeing case counts, not just in the U.S., but all over the world, start to really tick up right now, and that is not that's not going to work in his favor.
Meanwhile, Joe Biden in Pennsylvania, which you mentioned, one of the Rust Belt states, a lot of people are saying that is the key. If he cannot beat, if Donald Trump can't beat Biden in Pennsylvania, it's almost gone.
That's right. There are a couple different paths, but if Trump can't win any three of those states, it's unlikely he can win the presidency. And Michigan looks really not great for Trump. Wisconsin, there's a little more wiggle room there in the polling, but Biden is solidly ahead in the polling in all three of those states by pretty large margin. I think the reason why Pennsylvania comes up a lot is because we're almost certain to have to wait until 3 or 4 days after Election Day to know to see all of the mail ballots be counted. Now, if it's a total blowout, we might know that if Biden is the winner in a total blowout, we might know if he wins Florida that it's over. We might even know in those Rust Belt states early, before the end of the night on election night, or maybe by the next day or 2 days afterwards. But if things get really, really close, right, Pennsylvania is likely to be, along with maybe Wisconsin, possibly. That's where a lot of action is going to be. You're going to see a lot of back and forth political knife fighting, probably challenges to ballots, legal fights, and a lot of people are quite frankly worried about that scenario because of the president's unbacked claims about cheating that he's been talking about before the election. They're worried he will continue that sort of irresponsible rhetoric during that period of vote counting.
Well, there was a lot of negativity, and there has been, about Sleepy Joe and he's too old. This is coming from obviously the president and others in his party. But a lot of people watched that debate the other day, I think, and well, this is the commentary I'm hearing, and they were, because they'd heard all that, they were expecting gaffes and for Joe Biden to basically make mistakes or lose his train of thought. He didn't.
That's right. And I think a lot of people, even in the first debate, which was, noteworthy mostly for Trump's overly aggressive style, his interruptions, I think even then that was a huge question mark for Joe Biden. People had watched him on the campaign trail. They'd watched him speaking publicly, and they had questions about his ability to thrust and parry and counterattack when Trump was aggressive towards him. They had questions about his ability to endure throughout 90 minutes and still be sharp. And I think he has largely answered most of those questions. I think the questions that talk about his age, he is very, very advanced in years. He's 78 years old. But I think he has performed serviceably enough to put to rest those questions for a lot of folks. Not everyone, but many.
And the bottom line is with Joe Biden, he has just kept a low profile in so many ways, hasn't he? And that has been a message. I mean, I know they came out with quite an aggressive ad campaign early on, but it has really calmed.
Yeah, I mean, even throughout the summer, Joe Biden did keep a low profile. Trump has tried to use that against him by talking about Biden being in the basement. The problem for Donald Trump is that he just can't kind of stay on message for more than a couple minutes at a time. And he continues to sort of do things that hurt himself. And so I think the Biden campaign strategy has been to say, if Donald Trump is not going to get out of his own way, we're certainly not going to help them out any more than we need to. So he has stepped up his campaign schedule over the last few months into the fall. But their campaign has been very disciplined, and I think that's worked in their favor, no doubt.
How much cut through did it get with President Barack Obama speaking?
Barack Obama I don't, there are people, to be fair, there are people that voted for Barack Obama and then voted for Donald Trump. So that has to be part of the Biden campaign's calculus. I'm not privy to their internal data. So I don't know how many voters they feel like are on the table that fit that profile. But I think you can say without any hesitation that somebody like Barack Obama is going to do a lot to get voters who are on the fence about voting out to vote. These are people who are going to vote Democrat, but we just don't know if they're going to take the time to do it. And so that's, I think, one of the main things that both sides are trying to focus on. I think Trump's biggest challenge is that a lot of his rhetoric and his behavior is really aimed almost exclusively, whether it's intentional or not, the impact is that it's aimed at really getting out only his most hardcore supporters. And there's not a lot of work being done by him to try to win over voters who might have not voted last time or who were on the fence, people kind of more in the middle.
You mentioned the spike in coronavirus cases, and just yesterday in the United States, we saw the highest number since the start of the pandemic. So for the time being, it's not going anywhere. So comments regarding don't fear this because I got over it from President Trump, look, for many people that may sort of resonate, but for the 200-odd thousand that lost family members and others who got gravely ill, there'd be just no cut through.
I think that's true. And I think also, I think a lot of people are going to be aware that the president got the most high-class healthcare available in the world. You know, he was given sort of cutting-edge therapeutics, and he had some of the best doctors in the world. And of course, he didn't have to worry about health insurance, as you know, you over there in Britain don't have to worry about that either. But here in the United States, there are millions of people who don't have health insurance. So I think he's just been unable to to stop beating himself up on coronavirus. There are these peculiar things that he does, like not wearing a mask, like playing down the seriousness of the virus, that are just, I think, if he loses, are going to prove to have been pretty decisive.
Yeah, look, here in Australia, the Medicare system, we don't have everything right, but the Medicare system is very good. That you touched a point there. The overrepresentation of blacks, Hispanics, people socioeconomically challenged in the deaths and serious illness around coronavirus is extreme, isn't it? The healthcare system in the US really is in a shambolic state in many ways.
Shambolic is a great word. I'm glad you used it. It's one of the adjectives I've used to describe many things about the COVID response here. But it's a real tragedy that we have not been able to have more productive political bargain making on issues like healthcare, on issues like immigration. It's really a function and a reflection of our broken political system, where the two sides are so incentivized to appeal to their most hardcore supporters. This is just a structural political issue having to do with money, having to do with communications and other factors. And so there's just very little reward for working across political lines. And, you know, ordinary people pay the price for that, because the people who need help are people that would be helped by, you know, common sense, compromise solutions to issues like healthcare, immigration, and other things.
John, we've had the crystal ball out with many people that we've discussed this issue with in the US. It's getting very, very close. We are literally days away. Who's going to win?
My 13-year-old son has asked me that multiple times, and I tell him the same thing every time. I tell him, if the election were held today, you know, Joe Biden, I think, would win based on the polling, but anything can happen down the stretch. So we're getting close. It's 10 days out. I think Joe Biden looks well positioned to win, but anything can happen. The only other thing I'll say is that 56 million people have already voted. So that also works in Joe Biden's favor. That's almost half of how many people voted entirely in the last election.